Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Welcome to another live stream. We are looking today at audio. This is part 3 of our audio video presentation. My name is Scott Ford. I'm a teacher out here in Humble ISD, also an adjunct professor and published educational author. And welcome back to our live streams. So time is running up. We have only a few months left under the 1101, 1102 exam. And here in the classroom, we only have about a month left of school. So let's start talking about the material here. So let me pop over to our monitor too. But before we do that, really fast, I want to bring your attention to our Discord channel. Discord channel is monitored. It is a place where you can be part of the conversation regarding certifications, what you're doing to get certified, as well as share your triumphs, as well as your issues getting those certifications. So again, that is our Discord channel, free to join. So let's start taking a look at what our objectives are for this part of the unit. So we're going to identify and explain video and audio cable types, connections, and features. We are continuing this from our last presentation regarding video. We're going to learn how to configure video and audio settings on the device and through the computer. Describe the general characteristics of sound. Describe various types of audio formats. Give different specifications of speaker standards. And resolve common video and audio problems. Now, this used to be just like video, a separate unit all of itself. Back in the older days of the A+ certification, we would have a separate chapter, a separate thing just on audio, but the A+ doesn't stress it as much, but it's still good stuff to know, so that's what we're going to cover. So working with sound. So there are a few things we need in order to work with audio, with sound. We need a sound card. We need speakers. We can use a microphone, and of course, we need audio software. So we'll take a look at these in a little more detail. So first of all, let's introduce a concept called sampling. This is capturing sound. We call it sampling or digitizing. So we're capturing sound. Now, keep in mind that when we're looking at sound, sound is an analog wave. We talked about analogs way back in the early days of the A+ course, as well as the principles in the ITF certification course. So it's an analog wave. Well, our computers don't work in analog. They work in digital, right? So analog are waves, while digital are zeros and ones, on or off. So in order for the computer to work with sound, we have to digitize it first. We have to turn it into zeros and ones. And that is what digitization is. It is capturing the sound. And we have something called sampling rates. Sampling rates are measured in thousands of cycles per second, and the higher the sample rate, the better the sound quality is. So let me give you an example of what we're talking about here, and the live stream should capture this. So here we go.
This audio sample was created using 11 kilohertz.
So that was 11 kilohertz. Here's a different audio sample.
This audio sample was created using 96 kilohertz.
Okay, let's go back to the other one.
This audio sample was created using 11 kilohertz.
So you can probably hear there's a difference in quality. Not only is there a difference in quality, there's also a difference in file size. Obviously, the clearer and the more sample size that you have, or the bigger sampling rate, the more space it's going to take up on your storage device. Now, back in the old days, you could fill an entire hard drive up with a WAV file. We'll talk about waves in a minute. So the better the quality, obviously, the more space it's going to occupy. So let's take a look at some other terms to know. We have audio bit depth, amplitude, frequency, and timbre. I think some of my students aren't aware that they can be captured on a microphone as they're talking. So audio bit depth, number of characteristics of a particular sound for each sample. The number of bits of information in each sample. It determines the resolution of the sample. Basically, the higher the audio bit depth, the clearer the audio sound can be. Then we have amplitude. Amplitude is the loudness. This is the sound is a wave of energy. Amplitude is how much energy is in the wave. The more the amplitude, the louder the sound. So this is how loud the sound is. Frequency is the tone. This is the technical term for pitch, how high or low the notes sound. Frequency is measured in hertz. Now, I've got two different samples for you down here, and I'm curious as to whether YouTube might flag this video for copyright because we are going to use some different audio samples. So I'm kind of curious if YouTube is going to spank my hand on this one or not. So we'll find out. So let's take a look at the difference in frequency.
It doesn't seem to me like it's enough. It's just not enough, baby. It's just not enough. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. My darling,
All right, so that was a famous singer named Barry White, known for his very low pitch of his singing. Okay, so that is an example of a lower tone, right? Lower sounding notes versus something like this, which has a higher frequency. So you can hear right there the difference in tone, right? You have the lower tone and then you have the higher tone. The other one is timbre. Timbre is tone, color, or tone quality. Thank you very much. The perceived sound quality of a note or tone helps listeners determine the source of the musical note. So, for example, you might have the same note, right? If you are a musician, you might play the C note, right? Middle C. But it's going to sound different based off of whether or not you play that note on a guitar, on a flute, on a piano. It's going to give it the qualities of that sound. It separates the source of the sound even when playing the same note. This is a fun one. This is totally FYI, but just kind of a little anatomy lesson and how it ties into technology. So physiologically, adults can hear less and less of the higher frequencies as we get older. This is just part of getting older. As we get older, our ears are less receptive to certain frequencies. It's just part of the fun of getting older. There are ringtones that take advantage of this psychological fact, and these things are known as mosquito ringtones. So let's take a look at what we're talking about here. Let me pull this up for you. Pull that over there so you guys can see it. Okay, so this is mosquito ringtones, and what this is that back in the early days, phones were very much discouraged in class, and so for students, in order to answer their phones or know their phones are ringing, they would install these, knowing that their teachers were older than them. So let's see what you can hear. This is 8 kilohertz, which should be heard by everybody. So hopefully you were able to hear that. Now, if you are 50 years or younger, you should be able to hear this pitch. If you are 24 and younger, you should be able to hear this. If you are 18 and younger, you should be able to hear this. So those are an example of the different pitches. Now, what's kind of fun about this is that this actually got turned into kind of a way to keep teenagers from hanging around in different stores. When mosquito ringtones came out and when we discovered that this was a thing, you had certain convenience stores, and I remember them making the news, that would blast that higher pitch to keep teenagers from hanging around their stores. And it worked because it's such an annoying noise. But what wound up happening is parents would bring their kids to the store. Their kids would start to freak out because of this pitch. And then they found out what was going on and so forth and so on. Now, I can kind of share a little fun story with you. When I was in grad school, I was in my 30s in grad school at Texas A&M. Go Aggies. And I was bored in class. And I had just taught this lesson. And so I kept hitting the tone pitch for people under 30. And our professor was in her 60s. And so about half the class was kind of looking around for the source of the noise. And the other half of the class was completely oblivious to it. So I hit it again, and half the class was kind of like looking around, trying to find the noise, until one student said, "What is that noise?" And I closed my laptop. Anyways, so just a little fun that you can do with those. All right, let's take a look at recording formats. So recording formats, this is how the digitized data is structured. Okay, we need to digitize it, but the question is, how do we convert it? We have something called lossless compression, and we have something called lossy compression. Lossless compression means that we're not losing any of the quality of sound. It's going to save the sound, image, or video, because we can use this for other formats, as close to the original as it possibly can. Because we're saving the original, the file sizes can be absolutely humongous. And examples of lossless compression include WAV files, PNGs, H.264, and TIFF. While a lossy compression is going to sacrifice quality in order to save space. Some of this loss is not noticeable by people, but you can also crank it up even more so you do notice a loss, but again, it's to save your storage space. Examples of lossy compression include JPEGs, MP3s, and the AAC formats. Here is an example of WAV files. WAV files are an audio format. They're known as .wav or .wav, pronounced WAV. Audio file formats created by Microsoft and IBM, and it's a standard PC audio file format. It's uncompressed, which means these things can take up quite a bit of space. I want to say that the screen capture is from one of the Civ games. I can't remember if it was Civ 2 or Civ 3. Then we have something called MIDI. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. What it stands for is not important. But what we do need to know is MIDI is a text file with a series of commands that describe what notes to play. So think of this as sheet music. It's not the actual song, it's the sheet music, and it gives the instructions to the device on how to play that music. Okay, so they are incredibly small because at the end of the day, they are just text files. So let's play a little game called Name That Tune. What we're going to hear now are MIDI files that are played, and see if you can guess what they are. So here's our first song. We hit play. All right, did you guess the name of the song? It is Billie Eilish, Bad Guy. And it's a lot different, right, than what it actually sounds like if you have the recording. Let's try this song. Here we go. Kind of sounds like a musical box. Yep, one of my students in class guessed it. It is Harry Potter. So it's the Harry Potter theme from the Harry Potter movies. Let's take our next one. Here is our last one. See if you can recognize the song. Again, these are all text files. MIDI files are text files that the computer is having to then play the music off of. What song could that be? It, of course, is Never Gonna Give You Up, Rick Astley. So those are MIDI files. You can definitely hear some of the difference. Now we have different audio formats that we need to be aware of. First, you have the AAC. This stands for Advanced Audio Coding, and it is the native format for Apple iTunes. We have MP3s. This is a almost universally supported and very popular audio file format. I remember when MP3s were released, the recording industry went out there going, this is piracy. You're going to, music industry's dead. Kind of like what they did with the VHS tapes were released back in the day. There was protests by the video music film industry saying, everybody's going to pirate everything, et cetera, et cetera. They had the same reaction to MP3s when it came out. Then we have the OGG. This is the Vorbis format. This is an open source codex, means everybody can use it. You have Real Media. That's some old school right there. And then you have WMA, which is Windows Media Audio, which is proprietary. Some video formats to be aware of. You have the AVI. This is audio video interleave. You have the MP4, which is a very common type of video format. You got the old QuickTime movies, the MOV files. You have the WMV, which is Windows Media Viewer. You have the Flash video formats. And you have the MKV, which is a free and open source format as well. Very popular. All right, let's take a look at sound cards real fast. So sound cards, just like we have to have video cards, sound cards are what are going to make the audio. It works by converting analog sound waves to digital inputs and turns digital signals into analog waves that we can hear. So if you remember earlier in the video, I said audio comes out as wave files, right? It's analog wave files that have to be converted into digital. Well, when you have the digital information on the computer, it then has to be converted back into analog so that we can hear it. We can't hear the digital. We need the sound waves so we can hear what's going on. So incoming, this is information going into the computer, right? Analog information enters the sound card through something called an analog to digital converter chip. Built-in memory chip contains instructions for how to handle digital signals. The analog to digital converter is going to digitize the data and send it to the DSP, which is not important. None of this is really important. None of this is on the test. It's just a good idea to know. The DSP handles the processing requirements of sound, relieves the CPU, and the DSP sends data to the storage so your hard drive can handle it. To get it out of the computer, CPU retrieves a digital copy of the sound, sends the file to the DSP. The DSP digital to analog, which is what you would expect, then does all the conversion and goes to your speakers, which then moves the air, which creates the sound waves. So let's take a look at audio connectors. Sound cards need a way to both receive and send audio information from the outside world. So sound cards can be integrated, just like video cards, or they can be expansion cards. At the end of the day, you should have a 3.5 millimeter jack, which is your common connection type. Okay. At the very least, a sound card should provide output for a stereo speaker system and a microphone. Now, traditionally, jacks typically have a symbol in the back for the user to know which connection does what. And they are typically color coded, not that they always have to be, but they typically have a standard color which is associated with them. In the old days of the A+ exam, you had to know which color was for what type of input or output. While not really required anymore, it's still a good idea to know what does what. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one is the main stereo speaker. It is lime in color. This is also known as a line out. This is the default connection for typical speaker systems. The rear speaker is black. Now, again, not all sound cards are going to have all these connections. This is from an expansion card, which is going to have more features and functionality. But if you do have these, this is what they do. So rear speaker is black, connects rear speakers for surround sound. The center subwoofer is orange. This is used for the center or subwoofer on sound systems. The microphone connection is pink. This is used to connect a microphone. Now, I will say we're seeing a lot more of the USB microphones or Bluetooth microphones. So, for example, this is a Yeti. Okay, this Yeti is connected ultimately to my computer via a USB plug. But you can also see microphones connected through Bluetooth. But you also have, I would say in most computers, a way to plug in a microphone if it uses that jack. Now, you'll also have speakers that'll have one connection for input output, and your computer will detect what you're doing with it. You might also have a line in. This is blue. A line in allows a user to connect an audio source directly to the computer itself. And finally, those last two weird looking ones down here, these are called SPDIF connection, Sony Philips digital interface. You can connect surround sound directly to this port. So it's kind of like an HDMI cable connection for surround sound. You plug those in, boom, you're done. It handles all the rest. All right, let's talk about configuration and speakers. And this is not a particularly long unit, so we're kind of zipping through it pretty quickly. So configuration and speakers. Installing a sound card. Most motherboards have sound cards integrated into the motherboard. This is different than back in the old days. I remember back in the old days that you did not have sound. You had a PC speaker that would go beep, beep, and that would be it. If you wanted sound for your games, for example, you had to go to the store and buy a sound card and install them. Now, most of the time you don't really need to install sound cards anymore because they're integrated into the computer, but you can still go get sound cards if you kind of want the extra features and functionality and just want to make it extra special. So to install a sound card expansion card is the same as installing other cards. You turn off and unplug a computer. You practice your ESD precautions. You open the computer case, you find an open PCI Express slot, you install the device, you boot up the computer, and you install drivers. It's relatively simple to do. Configuration of sound is typically handled automatically. You don't usually have to touch anything, but if you do, you can go through the control panel to sound. You can look at settings, system, and sound. You can also look at settings and devices. So these are different places that you can configure your sound. But again, most of the time this is handled automatically for you. Don't worry about it. All right, let's take a look at mono, stereo, and surround sound. So mono means one track of sound. Your left side and your right side are exactly the same. It's just one channel. You hear equally on both sides. It's just the one channel, okay? While stereo has two tracks. There's a left track and a right track. So you're going to hear differently on your left side versus your right side. You have stereo. And it's funny, I was rewatching the old 1990s X-Men cartoons, and they actually have in the opening credits in stereo. I thought that was kind of cool, and also again realizing just how old I'm becoming because now all TV is in stereo. Then we have surround sound. Surround sound is 360 degrees of sound. So if you're playing games, let's say you're playing a first-person shooter, you're able to hear the bad guys no matter where you are all around you, right? So if they're like back here, you can hear them back here. If they're over here, you can hear them over here. So that is surround sound. And we have different speaker configurations. We have the 2.0. This is left and right speaker only. Then we have a 2.1. That .1 is called a subwoofer. The subwoofer adds the bass to your sound. So 2.1 is a pair of speakers called satellites. That's what you see here. And then a subwoofer. You can have a 5.1. A 5.1 begins you into the world of surround sound. You have 5 speakers. You have a left, right, center, left surround, right surround, and of course that .1 is the subwoofer. You can have a 7.1. This is also surround sound. You have 7 speakers, a left, a right, a center, a left surround, a right surround, a left back and right back, and of course a subwoofer. So troubleshooting sound. This is relatively easy to do. Sound usually either works or it doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, it's usually because of a very easy problem. First, you might have the wrong thing selected. Okay, you might have the wrong microphone selected. You might have the wrong output selected. You might have the wrong speaker selected. So most of the time, the wrong microphone or speaker is selected. You check the system selection and make sure that you have the right device checked. When everything was on lockdown and we had the Zooms and all this other stuff, if you have multiple audio devices, like for example, you might have a microphone and different speakers, you would make sure that your microphone was selected correctly while your speakers were set correctly, and not your speakers set to your microphone. You can't hear anything out of your microphone. Check your volume. Sometimes your volume's turned off. If your volume's turned off, you're not going to be able to hear anything. And of course, check the physical connections. You know, again, most audio problems are caused because you've selected the wrong input-output device, you have the volume off, or it's just not plugged in So always check your connections first. Yes, most of the audio problems are ID10T or PEBCAT issues. If that doesn't fix the problem, you might actually need to go into Device Manager. Check to see if the sound settings are correct. Check the Device Manager to make sure it can see the sound card and there are no errors. So not really much to look at that. It's fairly simple to do. Audio is fun to play with, but it's not as heavily covered on the A+ exam as it used to be. But you should still know the basics of audio as well as video is what we covered. Don't forget, we do have our Discord channel that you can join. It's free to join, and you can share, again, information on how you're doing, how's your studies going, what you recommend, and all that good stuff. All right, that's going to conclude not just this particular lesson, but this unit in general. So hopefully you are out there studying, getting the stuff done. If you are in my class, I have a website, and you take practice exams and look at lecture notes and all that good stuff. But until later, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and share. And until later, bye-bye for now.